Hi, this is Homay from Spitfire Audio, and I want to highlight Albion III Iceni. And if you're not familiar with our Albion range, they're comprised of a selection of different sound categories. You have a wide range of orchestral instruments, you have synth sounds, synth loops, then also some percussion loops, and then individual percussion hits. With this particular one, Albion 3, within the Brinell loops you get these really epic bassy loops. Then within the Darwin percussion you have some big, low individual drum sounds. And then Stephenson Steam Band gives you these really gritty, sometimes rumbling, low synth pads. And the Albion orchestra carries all the big-bodied bass and contrabass instruments. For example, in the string section you don't get any violins or violas, but you get 24 celli and 8 basses to create this really nice big section sound. So this library concentrates on big, fat hybrid sounds that you can create massive, epic, mega pieces with. I picked a few of my favorite sounds and put them into context. So let's play through the composition first, and then I play through the individual sounds to showcase them to you. The first sound that I've used is from the Brinell loops. This one has been slightly deconstructed, so if you, for example, don't want to have the bass within there, it comes without two. Then the bits of the loop itself. Just gives you a few options to play around with this one. If we go over here to the menu, it gives you all the sounds within that patch laid across the keyboard. Really cool sounds. You may have noticed within the menu over here, if you hold down the note, it will give you information about what the name of the sample is that you're playing, and then also the tempo it's playing in. So for example, the sound I wanted to use is this one, Fugbat. So I found that one over here. And the great thing about it, if you have them individually laid out like that, you can tempo sync them. Or you can also manually adjust the tempo. So for example, for this one, if it was to be playing in 154, it would be twice as fast, which I didn't want. So over here in Context Master View, if you press an exit over here, it allows you to adjust the tempo manually. So that's a really useful feature within that. Later on at bar 21, it moves on harmonically. So I needed for the bass to shift down a seminote. And I did that by opening the pitch shift in Logic. And then in Automation, I selected it to adjust then the pitch slightly. So I went on to -1. So if I single that out, I can show you how it's moving on. That moved it down by a seminote. That was to avoid any clashes within this composition. The next patch I used was from the Albion Orchestra, and here you get some really great shorts. So I'm playing up here because this patch has a feature that allows you to play in two different sections. You have section A and B, which have been placed differently within the room where it's been recorded, which is Lyndhurst Air Studios. So if you wanted to play around with the placement of them, which is what I've done by kind of moving on from one section to the next and then going back and forth a little bit, you can do that. So just to demonstrate. It's just keeping that bit of movement in there as well. Looking at the microphone mix that I've used here, I definitely used the closed microphones because I want to have that punch to those shorts, which has a lot more attack to it, which I really like. So first I'm kind of moving back and forth between section A and B, and later on I'm using both sections to really widen that sound. Then you have the same with the longs, having those in section A and B. And then for the melody, I use the legatos, which also come with portamento, which are really lovely. They're a little bit velocity sensitive, so if you press them harder, you get a bit more attack. You can really hear that nice section sound of the 24 celli and the 8 basses, which make it really nice and low rumbling. I then moved on to the brass, and you have some really lovely shorts here too. So you have that great raspy tone at the harder attack. Then I've used some longs. I really like how it goes from the almost muted sound to the really open and raspy sound in that long. And then we also have a long nasty patch that gives you a bit more of an abrasive tone to it as well, which come in really useful. And we have some great brass rips here as well. These ones I've used to highlight certain sections. For the mic mix, I've used a lot of the closed microphones because I really want to have them up close, have that attack of the instrument coming through as well. Then I'm a massive fan of the woodwinds in the lower register. They sound really powerful there. It has this raspiness to it as well. I've used the woodwinds mainly to back up the string sections together with the brass as well, just to emphasize some of the staccatos with the shorts and then also with the legato some of the melodies. So for example, I'm going to solo out brass, strings and woodwinds here. So it creates this really nice section sound together. And then over here, to emphasize the melody of the strings, I layered it with some woodwinds as well. There's some real force behind that, which is great. Moving on to Stephenson's Steam Band, you got some incredible synth sounds over here, and they're all made of the orchestral instrument samples, so they naturally blend in really nicely with all the other parts of that library. Here, for example, we have one called Inspiring Step Ballad. A mosquito-riddled Thames Riverside. Here we have a dark organ. And if you're missing something in the high frequencies, you really can use those synth pads to make use of them there. Because they really sound great in the higher register as well, but I think it's all about the lows. In this section I changed the feel a little bit, but I was missing some of the grittiness from the earlier Brinell loop, so if I show you the transition. It didn't have that much grit, so I added that steam band patch here. To keep a bit of that tension in there that I wanted. Otherwise I used the steam band more of a transition and blending tool to really tie up the different patches throughout the piece. So for example, in the beginning, I was playing around with the ADSR to have a bit of a slower attack and then a slower release to really crescendo in with the instrument programming that I've done and then come out really nicely. So without them, it sounds like this. And then with, I think it helps gelling really nicely from one into the next section. And another example to give is over here. It kind of just fills out the room nicely. Then lastly, I used some of the Darwin percussion hits. So you have this, as I said, it's really low, big drums. And they're duplicated from one octave to the next, just so you have it on 2 fingers. If you wanted to play fast passages with your hands, it's a better way to playing them in rather than trying to do it on the same key. This one I used to accent the beat of the first Brinell loop that I've used. So it just highlights it a little bit. And just to quickly show you in the mix window that I've only used the lexicon, a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on the instrument I'm using, and that was it. So with all of that in mind, let's listen to the whole piece again. Thank you so much for watching. See you at the next one.